I never imagined that walking down a New York City sidewalk would change my life. I was in a stage of new beginnings. I was newly married. I was in New York on a business trip, only to have my whole life change in an instant. Today, I want to tell you what happened and what moment eventually led me to being on disability, ruining my marriage, and eventually retiring early. I've never shared this story beginning to end like this before. It's a very serious issue for me and one that I don't talk about often. Hi, I'm Pam. Welcome to Pam's Retirement Reset. I'm really glad you're here. Many people think I retired early on purpose. The fact is, I always had it in my plan to retire early, but I didn't think it would happen this way. My retirement began with an accident I never saw coming. Let me start from the beginning. It was a beautiful October morning. I was on a business trip in New York City, and I was with my new husband, and we were going to breakfast before we were going to catch the plane that afternoon to come home. It was a beautiful day. It's a beautiful, beautiful morning, nothing unusual. And then suddenly I heard a strange sound. An incredible blow happened to my head, and I was pushed against a building. My body fell to the sidewalk. I had blood streaming down my face and into my eyes. And when I looked over my shoulder as I was lying on the ground to see what it was a window air conditioner, and it had fallen 5 floors and hit me on the head. A crowd gathered, an ambulance came, and this is something I only remember bits and pieces from this day, but this is something I remember very clearly. As the paramedic was taking me into the ambulance, he got up very close to my face and he looked me in the eyes and he said, as he smiled, "Today is your lucky day." I will never forget that. I will never forget his voice, his face, and his smile. That has gotten me through some tough, tough moments. At first, I didn't understand what he meant, but eventually it became clear. I was in the hospital for 10 hours that day. I was stapled and stitched. I had a neck collar on the entire time. They kept asking me questions, cognitive cognitive questions like who's the president of the United States and things like that to see if my mind was still there. Um, while this was happening, I had the worst headache that I have ever had in my life. And I also had this odd thing going on where I could not express myself. I kept talking very, very loud. Um, and I thought I was talking normally, but apparently that's not the case. Um, they gave me some pain relievers for my head, and after 10 hours, they told me there was nothing else they could do for me. So we left the hospital, and obviously we missed our plane, so we had to stay in New York another night. And I was walking across First Avenue where the hospital was, and when I got into the middle of the road, I just put my hands on my head because the noise of the city was so intense. And of course, all of the traffic came screeching to a halt. Horns were blowing, taxi cabs were blowing their horns, yelling out their windows. And all I saw, I'm standing like this, thinking, oh my gosh. And all I saw was my husband across the side on the sidewalk, waving his hands and yelling at me to get out of the street. And I was paralyzed. I was paralyzed by noise. Finally, he came out to get me in the middle of the road and hauled me back to the sidewalk. Uh, I After that, I don't remember anything. I don't remember being in the hotel again. I don't remember going home. Obviously, we took an airplane. I don't remember any of it. I don't remember even arriving home. My brain had changed. That day, my brain changed. And after that, my life was different. I called in work. They told me to keep in touch to let them know how I was doing. I tried going to the grocery store, and when I walked in there, I felt like I was in China. The aisles, the labels, the food labels on the aisles, I didn't understand. This was a grocery store I was very familiar with, and I had no idea what any of those words meant. I couldn't process simple decisions. I tried to drive to my doctor and that I'd been to many, many times, and I got lost. It took me an hour riding around in circles to get to my doctor. Eventually, I couldn't drive myself anymore to the doctor. And I'm going to pause here because the next is talking about what was wrong with me and how I got better. My company amazed me. I knew I was badly hurt. My company told me, just get better, keep in touch. And they called me at one point when I was out 6 months, when they legally could have gotten rid of my job or hired somebody else. And but they knew how much I wanted to go back to work, and I really did. That's all I wanted, was to go back to work and be real again, be whole again, have my mind back again. And they told me to write down on a piece of paper that they will hold my job for me. And they said, pin it on your refrigerator so you'll always see this, and you will be able to come back to your job. I will always be grateful to them for that, because I knew something was terribly wrong, and I couldn't understand what was happening to me. I wrote every symptom down on a piece of paper because I couldn't remember anything. And I took that list to my family doctor, and he told me that this was going to take a while to get over, that I was going to have to learn to live a different way. And I knew I needed to see a neurologist, but I was on workers' comp because this accident happened when I was at work. And I called my job and I said, please let me say I was on vacation so I could see doctors that are better. And they said, sorry, we can't. So my family doctor sent me to my first neurologist. I walked into this neurologist's office after waiting 3 weeks to a month to get an appointment with him, and I came in with my list. I put my list on his desk. He walked into his office reading the thing that I'd filled out at the reception. He sat down and he said, I'm going to put you on antidepressants. And I was livid. I was furious. I mean, I wasn't depressed. My brain didn't work anymore. Those are two very different things. So I went home all bummed out and I called my family doctor back again and he sent me to another neurologist again, another wait. And I walked into the doctor and he this time he read my list and he looked at me and he said, "You need to be on antidepressants." And I just said, I can't, I don't know what to do anymore." So I went back to my family doctor and finally he had an answer for me. He said that a doctor who was a neurologist was his teacher in medical school and he was now practicing in my area. I was so excited. He said he was very good. I went to see this man and he was so kind. And so I love this man. He was so kind and so wonderful to me. He put me on a sliding scale of payment and he didn't charge too much because he's just a kind man. A kind man. He took me under his wing and he listened. He believed me. He tested my brain. He gave me exercises to do. He taught me how to remember things again. He taught me how to write again. And I mean, he taught me so much. I love this doctor and I still go back to see him occasionally. Um, I wasn't getting any help from home at this time. When I would, when my husband would come home, he would look at me and tell me that he wanted me to say that everything was fantastic. Went, what? I said, no, everything is not fantastic. I, my mind is gone. I don't know what I've done all day. I have no idea where I am or what's going on. And he said, I don't care. Just you need to tell me that everything's fantastic when I come home from work. Well, that sent me to a marriage counselor immediately. And 6 months later, I filed for divorce. My neurologist eventually gave me permission to start working, going in for half days, going in for the half day every other day. That's how I started back. And I made it through the first week and I had taken 2 steps back. It's like that old saying, one step forward, 2 steps back. That happened to me and I was out again for another month. Um, it was a long haul. Eventually, I started working again, but I wasn't the same employee anymore. I made mistakes. Coworkers were starting to notice. Numbers were very difficult for me, and numbers were my job. That's what I did. I was dyslexic, and I knew after a short while, I mean, I kept trying, but I knew that it wasn't going to work. So, what was my big solution to this? I wanted to keep working. So, based solely on my reputation and my career, the first opening at another place, I was immediately hired. I stayed there for not even a year, and it was the same pattern, or I could not do the job well. I made a lot of mistakes over and over again. I was really struggling to do it. I would come home and just collapse from brain overload. And I made a lot of mistakes. So what did I do then? I tried to get another job, and I did. And this would be my last job. I went to this last job, and I kept trying. I kept trying to work, and it was one Thursday afternoon. I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And I closed my office door that afternoon. I went home. I called in sick for work. I applied for disability and I never went back. I'm going to take a slight break and I'm going to talk about how I got on disability. I was approved immediately, but I'll be back in a second. Most people tell me that it takes years to get on disability once they've applied. It took me 2 weeks. Now, I can't promise this will work for everyone, but this is what I did. Social Security and disability, they want medical proof, and I had a lot of it. I went to my neurologist and I asked for my paperwork, and he suggested one more test that I take. Um, and he referred me to a doctor that did specialized in neuropsychological examinations. I went to this wonderful doctor and I took these tests. It was exhausting. It was totally exhausting. The test was supposed to take 5 hours. Now, these tests aren't that hard. I mean, individually, they aren't that hard. If you could do a couple in a day, no problem. But within 2 hours, I was done. My head was on the table. My brain was finished, and I couldn't go any further. And I remember telling that doctor that I needed to come back another day to redo the test because maybe I didn't get enough sleep, maybe something happened, and she was so incredibly kind and she let me come back and she did like a modified version of that test because she knew I couldn't handle the entire 5 hours. And when we finished that test, she said to me, um, to look out for the report that would come in my email. And she said, send this to disability and you shouldn't have any problems. Well, I got the report and I read it. I didn't understand a thing on that report. I didn't understand any of it. It was filled with medical terminology that meant absolutely nothing to me. But apparently, it explained exactly what had happened to my brain that made me unable to continue working. Um, I also I also visited a disability attorney. I figured I would save the trouble and have them make the process easier for me. Then I learned that they would receive a part of my back pay if my claim was approved. And I decided I would rather not do that and just fill out the claim myself. So instead of simply filling out the claim, which I did, I filled out the crucial parts of the claim. I told them my story. I wrote in the margins. I wrote on the back of the paper. I attached sheets. I told them everything that I told you previously in this video. I told them how my brain had changed, how I tried to go back to work, how I could no longer do a career that I had for 40 years. And then I also attached the neuropsych exam, and that was it. About a week later, I received my answer. I was approved. And honestly, I couldn't believe it. Everything I had been through, someone finally understood. I was 58 years old. My disability benefits started the following month. There was still a 2-year waiting period when you're on disability to get on Medicare. So I had to find other health insurance that my family doctor took because that's who I was seeing. My neurologist, I just went to visit. I didn't go to him for medical care. I just went to go give him a hug. but um, but I did that for 2 years, and looking back, That air conditioner falling on my head from a fifth floor window changed every part of my life. It changed my health. It changed my marriage. It changed my career. It changed the future I thought I was going to have. But it really did and didn't define who I became. I always knew that I would retire early, but I didn't know it would be like this. Over time, I learned to cope, and I still cope with my brain. And I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty doggone good. And I thank you for letting me share my story with you. If you've been through something that has completely changed your life, I would love to hear your story in the comments. And if you're interested in real conversations about retirement, I have a lot of real conversations about retirement, resilience, and starting over. I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel. God bless, and I'll see you next time.